You're with RT live from Moscow. Now, French military jets are already over Libya to enforce the UN-backed no-fly zone. Foreign leaders meeting in Paris said they are ready to do whatever it takes to stop Colonel Gaddafi from targeting civilian areas. Reports from Libya suggest that forces loyal to Gaddafi are carrying out attacks on the rebel stronghold city of Benghazi despite the government ceasefire. RT's Paula Slier now has more on this from the capital, Tripoli.
French fighter jets flew over Libya. They're waiting, of course, for the international call to enforce this no-fly zone. And that latest word from that meeting in Paris is that they will be acting immediately. Now, it is less than 24 hours since the Libyan government said that it was enforcing an immediate ceasefire. But here on the ground, intense fighting continues, particularly in the rebel-held town of Benghazi. What we're hearing there are very different stories coming out from the rebel side as opposed to the government forces. The rebels insisting that they are being fired on by three fronts. They say that one of those fronts is the Mediterranean Sea. They say that there have been airstrikes, there is intense shelling, and that among the targets being hit are civilians. The rebels saying that many people have been injured and many more have been killed. Now, the rebels did capture a tank belonging to Gaddafi's troops. They've been parading this through the streets. There are still conflicting reports over a plane that was shot down there this morning, Saturday. Not yet clear exactly who it belonged to and who shot it down. The Gaddafi regime, for its side, is insisting that it is adhering to this ceasefire that it put into place on Friday afternoon. It says that it is the rebels that are on the offensive. It is them who are breaking the ceasefire, and it is them that are intensifying the fighting on the ground to try and mobilize the international community to act as quickly as possible. From Gaddafi himself, we are hearing harsh words. He said that the international community will regret if they interfere in Libyan affairs. He also said that this is an injustice, this is a clear aggression, and it is uncalculated risk for consequences. He is, of course, talking about the UN resolution 1973. At the same time, Gaddafi said that this resolution was invalid because the international community is not allowed to interfere in the internal affairs of sovereign states. We've also been hearing from Gaddafi's son, Saif al-Islam. He's also been talking on local state television. He has warned against infidel attacks. That's what he's been calling the uprising that is happening now in Benghazi. He also said that it is time for people to join in the fight. Now, it's not really clear what's happening in terms of the ceasefire. There are those that think that the government is insincere. There are those that think that this is the sign of a crumbling regime trying to save itself. But when we listen to what rebel leaders, and particularly the opposition, are saying, they say that essentially Gaddafi is lying and he is trying to buy time. But even amongst the rebels themselves, there is agreement that there are two areas in this resolution that are cause for concern. The one area is the terminology all necessary measures, and the other area is when it talks about the need to defend people who are under attack or who might be under attack. Now, these are very broad definitions. They allow for a lot of intervention to take place, and that is why the concern here in Libya is that what might be the start of international intervention here in the sense of a no-fly zone could quickly develop into something that is much more long-term and far-reaching. The Libyans are very much against having foreign troops in their country, not least of all because this country was occupied by Italian troops in the past. They have seen the consequences of US troops in Iraq and in Afghanistan, in Iraq particularly, where there was a 12-year no-fly zone. People here do not want to see this no-fly zone extended and dragged out for that period of time. At the same time, we're hearing from the United Nations Human Rights. They said that they're very worried because they have no record of what is happening to rebel fighters who have been captured. They have no record of what is happening inside the prisons and inside the security services. They said that there can be some kind of collective punishment that is underway here at the moment. So essentially, the international community's call for the fighting to end on the ground is a question in terms of where it will end. One of the demands by the international community is also that Gaddafi needs to retreat. And people here are asking, well, what happens if he retreats? If he takes his soldiers out of certain towns, won't the rebels then move forward into those areas? And will that not only escalate the fighting on the ground?
RT's Paula Slier there reporting from Tripoli. Well, at a meeting in Paris this afternoon, French President Nicholas Sarkozy said that his country's planes are now over the town of Benghazi, preventing any attacks against civilians. Our correspondent Daniel Bushell is across the story.
President Sarkozy made the announcement after the summit, as you say, attended by the big guns of world defence. So the decision has been taken at the top level. US Secretary of State Hillary Clinton among them. Denmark and Canada will supply fighter jets to the effort. Italy, France and Spain will provide air bases for support in the region, while other Arab states, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Jordan and the United Arab Emirates, have said they do back the deployment of a no-fly zone over Libyan airspace. And the main role, along with those Arab states, will be played by the UK and France. UK leader David Cameron says that he fully backs the deployment of a no-fly zone, which will in effect ground Gaddafi's jets and helicopters, and the Arab states will play a supporting role, obviously key their support in the region. France says its #1 concern is to defend the civilian population, and we're seeing other Western powers after this summit coming round to that point of view. Germany's Angela Merkel said that the fact that Germany abstained from the UN vote on establishing a no-fly zone does not mean they don't support that vote, only that they will not use direct military intervention themselves. Germany will not be sending forces to the effort. Let's listen to exactly what Nicholas Sarkozy had to say.
We agreed to use all necessary means, in particular military means, to enforce the UN Security Council decision. That's why, in agreement with our partners, our Air Force will oppose any aggression from Colonel Gaddafi against the population of Benghazi. As of now, our aircraft are preventing planes from attacking the town. As of now, other French aircraft are ready to intervene against tanks or armoured vehicles threatening unarmed civilians.
So growing unanimity between leaders here in the EU about military intervention, but also growing concerns among the population at large if you speak to them about the double standards here. Many are saying, A, stay out of Libya, and B, if you're going to intervene in Libya, then why not the other places where there's horrible escalating violence in the region? And the concern is that Libya is an oil-rich place where the West, the EU and the US have big commercial interests, and other places like Bahrain, which is also suffering, Yemen, Ivory Coast is seeing horrible violence. The West is not so interested.